Hey everyone, and welcome back. We're diving into a really cool art movement this week, Impressionism. It kind of flipped the art world on its head.
Yeah, it's funny how this group of artists, everyone was putting down they were like the outcasts, ended up changing how we see art, like completely.
Totally. Imagine 19th century France, right?
Mm.
The Académie des Beaux-Arts, they're like the big dogs, and their salon exhibition was the only game in town.
If you wanted to be anybody as an artist, you had to play by their rules.
And those rules, man, they were strict. It was all about like perfect brushwork and painting these huge historical scenes or stuff from mythology.
Yeah, and it all had to be so idealistic, like their version of perfect. Not a lot of room for, doing your own thing.
And then these rebels come in, these artists who wanted to break free. And they were drawn to the everyday, like what they saw around them. The light hitting a busy street, people dancing, just life happening.
And the crazy thing is they started taking their easels outside. Plein air painting is what they call it, right? Like a total revolution just to paint what they saw, the light changing.
And that changed everything, didn't it? Painting outside, just looking at the world right in front of them.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. No more smooth brushstrokes. They use these short, choppy strokes, pure color. The viewer's eye, mixed it all together.
And those colors, forget the dark and gloomy stuff. The Impressionists went for bright, vibrant colors, like you could feel the sunlight.
It was like they bottled sunshine and put it right on the canvas. Never seen before, that energy.
But the art world, the establishment, they weren't ready for this change, were they?
Ha, no way. Critics thought their work was a mess. Unfinished. Some even thought it was, offensive. Can you imagine pouring your heart into a painting and they call it an impression, not even a real painting?
That actually reminds me of a really important moment, the Salon des Refusés in 1863.
Ah, yes, the Salon of the Rejected. It was where the art that was too wild for the official salon ended up, like a breeding ground for all these cool new ideas. And the Impressionists, they were right in the middle of it.
And then there was that scandal with Manet's Le Déjeuner sur l'herbe.
Oh man, that painting. A naked woman having a picnic with these two dressed up guys right there in a park. It was like he threw a bomb at the art world. People were outraged.
One painting started this whole revolution. It's wild.
And you know what? The Salon rejecting Manet's work and all this other Impressionist art, it just fueled them. They were like, fine, we'll do it our way.
And that's when they started their own exhibitions, right? They went rogue, showed their art straight to the people.
Exactly. The first one was in 1874, and it was huge. Monet, Renoir, Degas, Pissarro, everyone was there. It was Impressionism in all its glory.
And wasn't that when the name Impressionism stuck? Not as a compliment, though.
Yeah. Some critic, Louis Leroy, he's looking at Monet's impression Sunrise, and he's like, this isn't even art, it's just an impression. Little did he know that name would become, well, everything.
So even though people were hating on them, these artists, they just kept going. 8 exhibitions they put on from 1874 to 1886.
They didn't always make a lot of money from them at first, but it got the word out. People started seeing Impressionism, talking about it.
And to think it all started with this group of artists that everyone rejected. They changed the art world forever.
It just shows you sometimes you got to go against the grain, express yourself.
100%. Now, before we get into each artist and what made them special, let's break down what Impressionism really is.
Yeah, good idea. The techniques, those colors, what they were painting, it all comes together to create something totally new.
Okay, so let's dive into the nuts and bolts of Impressionism. What really sets them apart?
Well, color is a big one. I mean, think bright, almost glowing, and applied in these thick, short strokes.
Right, it's like they weren't trying to blend it perfectly. They put the colors down and let your eye do the work.
And that was all because they were painting outside, remember? On plein air. They could see how light and shadow shifted all day long, and they captured that feeling, like the air itself. You couldn't do that in a studio.
It's like freezing a moment, the light, everything.
Yeah. And that's another big thing. They were obsessed with these everyday moments. No more big historical scenes. It was life happening right in front of them. City streets, cafes, parks, even their own gardens.
And it wasn't posed or stiff. It was movement, like a photo of real life.
Like Degas, he loved ballet, but he didn't paint them all pretty and posed. He painted them warming up, getting ready, behind the scenes.
It's like we're getting a secret peek into their world, the real stuff that makes the dance happen.
Exactly. And speaking of capturing a moment, think about photography. It was getting popular then, and that idea of freezing time, it definitely had an impact on these artists.
Interesting how technology can change art, huh? Like they were trying to paint a photograph, that instant feeling.
You know what else was a big influence? Japanese woodblock prints. Japonism, they called it. Paris was crazy for them, and you can see it in the Impressionist paintings.
Yeah.
The strong outlines, the way they cut off the scene, the off-center compositions.
They took inspiration from everywhere, huh? And made something totally new out of it.
Exactly. Art crosses all borders. It's pretty cool.
Okay, we can't talk about Impressionism without talking about Monet, the master of light.
Oh, Monet. This guy was obsessed with light, with how it changed everything. He's famous for these series of paintings, like Haystacks or the Rouen Cathedral, painted at different times of day and different weather.
And what's so amazing is it's not just light, it's time passing, right? Each painting is like a frame in a movie showing how the light transforms the whole scene.
He wasn't just painting a haystack or a cathedral. He was painting time, how light changes, how nothing stays the same.
And he came up with these crazy techniques like that wet on wet thing, putting wet paint on top of more wet paint, no waiting around.
And that made the paintings look soft, like the light itself is blending. Totally different from the old way of painting, all layered and polished.
Monet's work has this almost dreamy feeling like you're looking through, I don't know, a haze of light and air.
Yeah, and later on, his water lilies paintings, they're just mesmerizing. These giant canvases swirling with colors and light. You just get lost in them.
Okay, another big name is Degas. But he wasn't exactly like Monet, even though they were both Impressionists.
Yeah, Degas, he was all about the human body, dancers especially. He loved their movements, their grace, and that whole world of ballet.
And the way he composed his paintings, it was different. Monet's kind of like melt into light and color, but Degas more structured, more thought out.
He was a master of lines and how to put things together, and his paintings have a depth, a perspective that stands out.
He was a real experimenter too, right? Not just paintings. Those pastel drawings he did are amazing.
Totally. Always pushing the boundaries, Degas was. And he was really into photography, too. You can see it in how he cropped the scenes, how he caught people at these weird angles, like a snapshot.
No, we can't forget Renoir, the guy who painted joy and beauty, all those Parisian scenes.
Ah, Renoir, his paintings are full of life. They're bright, glowing, and just warm. He really captured the energy of Paris, all the people hanging out, dancing, just enjoying themselves.
Luncheon of the Boating Party, that's a classic Renoir. It's like a perfect summer day, friends on a balcony over the Seine, just having fun.
The way the light filters through the trees, the colors of the clothes, the tablecloth, it's just beautiful.
Renoir, he loved painting people, especially women. His paintings celebrate beauty and just the good things in life.
Right, and we can't leave out the women impressionists. They brought a whole new perspective to the movement.
Berthe Morisot and Mary Cassatt, they painted women's lives, the things women did, taking care of the house, being mothers, spending time with other women.
Their paintings showed the world in a different light, and the fact that they were in those impressionist exhibitions, it shows how open and diverse the movement was.
It's crazy how all these different artists, each with their own style, came together and changed art forever.
But they weren't just making pretty pictures, they were showing us what the world was like then. All the changes happening in Paris and everywhere.
So before we wrap things up, let's zoom out a little and think about the world these artists were living in. It was a crazy time, lots of change, and you can feel it in their art.
Yeah, it's like art is a mirror, showing us what people were thinking and feeling back then.
So after a quick break, we're going to dive into that, how Impressionism captured a moment in history. Okay, so we're back and ready to dig into what was happening around these artists while they were painting.
Yeah, like we were saying, it was a time of huge change. I mean, the Industrial Revolution was booming, technology was changing everything. It was a whole new world.
And Paris, that's where it was all happening, right? Impressionism was born there, and Paris itself was changing like crazy. Remember Baron Haussmann? He was reshaping the whole city.
Yeah, those wide boulevards, those cafes, the parks, that's all Haussmann. The Impressionists weren't just painting pretty pictures, they were capturing this new Paris, the energy, the modern life, all of it.
It's like they were the photographers of their time, but with paint, you know? Snapshots of light on a busy street, people at a cafe, the whole vibe.
And remember, we talked about the Flâneur, that guy just strolling through the city, observing everything. That's the Impressionist perspective. Like, they're seeing the world through fresh eyes.
They were also seeing a new kind of middle class, people with more free time, more money to spend. You can see it in their paintings, people picnicking, boating on the Seine, going to concerts.
And it's not just what Paris looked like, it's the feeling, the atmosphere. These paintings really capture that moment in time when everything was changing so fast.
So Impressionism broke all the rules. changed how people painted, and showed us this new world. What about its impact? I mean, did it stick around?
Oh, yeah. Impressionism was a game changer. It opened the door for all kinds of modern art that came after.
It's like the foundation, right? You can see their influence everywhere, from post-impressionism to fauvism, even abstract expressionism.
Think Van Gogh, Matisse, Kandinsky. They all took something from the Impressionists, the way they used color, the freedom, the experimentation.
And it wasn't just painting. Impressionism had a ripple effect on music, literature, even fashion. Debussy and Ravel, those composers, they were trying to create music that felt like an Impressionist painting, all atmosphere and feeling.
And writers like Virginia Woolf, Marcel Proust, they were also influenced by how Impressionism captured the way we experience the world, the inner thoughts and feelings.
It's amazing that even now, all these years later, people still love Impressionism. Those bright colors, the loose brushwork, those moments frozen in time, they still speak to us.
I think their paintings remind us to appreciate the little things, the everyday beauty, and how everything changes, nothing stays the same.
But some people say Impressionism is all about surface, all pretty pictures, but not much depth. Like it's missing the emotion, the deeper meaning you find in other art.
Yeah, I can see that point. The colors, the brush strokes, they're captivating, but maybe there's not a lot underneath. They didn't really dive into the big questions, the human condition, all that.
Like they chose style over substance. The visual impact was more important than a deeper meaning.
Yeah, maybe. But you got to remember what they were up against. They were breaking centuries of tradition. They were rebels, changing what art could be. They opened up a whole new way of seeing.
So maybe the question isn't about how deep Impressionism was, but about how it changed everything, how it made people think differently about art. And it still inspires us today. That's pretty cool.
And that's what art is all about, right? It's up to you, what you see, what you feel, what speaks to you.
Absolutely. There's no right answer. It's about the experience, the connection you make with the art.
So next time you're looking at a Monet or a Renoir, think about what they did, how they changed the rules, how they saw the world. They were revolutionaries.
And don't be afraid to decide for yourself. Does art have to be more than just beautiful? Think about it, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive. All right, so we talked about how the Impressionists painted, their style, who the big names were, but to really get it, we got to understand what was going on in the world back then.
It was like everything was changing. I mean, cities were growing like crazy with the Industrial Revolution, new technology everywhere. The old ways were like disappearing.
Yeah, and Paris, the Impressionist city, was getting a total makeover. Baron Haussmann, he was in charge of that, right? All those wide streets and fancy buildings we see in their paintings, that's him.
It's true. The Impressionists weren't just painting pretty pictures. They were showing us this new Paris, all the hustle and bustle, the modern life.
It's like they were capturing the city, changing right before their eyes.
Yeah.
Like, if they had cameras back then, they'd be the best street photographers. Those glimpses of light on a busy street, the crowds, the energy.
And remember how we talked about the flâner, that person just wandering around, observing? That's the Impressionist view, seeing everything new and fresh.
And they were also seeing a new kind of people, the middle class, who had more free time and money. All those paintings of people relaxing in parks, boating, going to shows, that's that new lifestyle.
It's like they captured the whole feeling of Paris in those years, the excitement, the change, everything. It wasn't just what the city looked like. It was the whole vibe.
So they broke the rules, they changed how people painted, and they showed us this changing world. But did Impressionism, have a lasting impact?
Oh, absolutely. Impressionism was huge. It basically paved the way for all the modern art movements that came after.
It's like they planted the seed, right? You can see bits of Impressionism in everything from post-Impressionism to fauvism, even abstract expressionism.
Exactly. Artists like Van Gogh, Matisse, Kandinsky, they all took inspiration from what the Impressionists did. That freedom with color, the way they experimented, it all started there.
And it wasn't just painting either. Impressionism had an influence on music, writing, even fashion. Composers like Debussy, Ravel, they were trying to make music that sounded like an Impressionist painting, all about the atmosphere and emotion.
And writers like Virginia Woolf, Marcel Proust, they were also inspired by how the Impressionists captured the way we experience the world, our thoughts, our feelings, that inner world.
It's amazing that even today, over 100 years later, people are still drawn to Impressionism. Those bright colors, the loose brushstrokes, those moments they captured, it still feels so alive.
Their paintings, they remind us to slow down, appreciate the beauty in the everyday, those simple moments. And they remind us that everything changes, nothing stays the same.
But some people say Impressionism is, I don't know, lacking something. That it's all about the surface, the pretty pictures, but not much depth. Like it's missing that emotional weight or intellectual depth you find in other art movements.
I can see that. The colors, the way they painted, it's captivating. But maybe there isn't much beneath the surface. Like they weren't trying to tackle big ideas, the human condition, things like that.
So it's like they went for style over substance. The visual impact was the most important thing.
Maybe, yeah. But we have to remember the context, right? They were going up against centuries of tradition. They were revolutionaries, changing the whole idea of what art could be. They showed us a new way of seeing the world.
So maybe the real question isn't how deep Impressionism was,
Hmm.
but how it changed everything, how it made people rethink art. And it still inspires us today. That's going to count for something, right?
And that's the beauty of art, isn't it? It's all up to you, what you see, how you feel, what speaks to you personally.
Exactly. There's no right or wrong answer. It's all about the experience, that connection you make with the art.
So next time you're looking at a Monet or a Renoir, remember what they were doing, how they shook things up, how they saw the world. They were trailblazers pushing the boundaries.
And don't be afraid to decide for yourself. Does art have to be more than just beautiful to be great? Think about it. Keep exploring the art world, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive.